It's surprising how many times in life in software you wish you were part of the AV club in high school. Oh, that got a laugh. All right. So welcome to what I think is a pretty interesting forum. It's a question of how do we get a lot of the concepts we've been talking about so far today integrated into something that produces additional value, which is code names for most of us for actual money. So hopefully this gets everyone leaning forward a little bit in their seats. I will demand audience participation at the end. I'll request gently. So please queue up some questions. We'll be happy to take it. I have the advantage of having an excellent panel of practitioners who actually have done the work to understand in a pretty deep way what works, and sometimes we can learn through their non-successes about what doesn't work, both on making it work inside from a technology point of view and making it work inside from an organizational point of view. So this will be a play of three parts, not claiming to be Shakespeare, but we'll try to cover marketing positioning. I'll try to spend some time on roles and use case scenarios for the actual technology itself inside of businesses, and we'll spend some time on skill sets and organizational concerns. And then I'll do a quick wrap and we'll go to questions. So I'll have the panelists introduce themselves pretty quickly. I'll follow the same format myself and introduce myself. It's not a 12-step introduction, but I'll make it quick. So my name is Rob. I work for Microsoft. We produce tools, we produce platforms. We're in the consumer and the enterprise space. For this purposes, this audience, we're really interested in making the best big data tool set and capabilities that we can. The customers we serve are both consumer enterprise, and what I do, I spend a lot of time at whiteboards inside of Microsoft trying to decide what we ship, what order and capabilities are present, and then try to make it an appealing offer to end customers. So I do strategery, and I used to do a lot of product work when I was more useful. So this is an interesting role for me. So I'll pass it down the line, and Rohit, if you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Rohit Valia. So I'm director of the enterprise marketing at Platform Computing. We are a 20-year company which was recently acquired by IBM. So Platform Computing has been in the business of managing very large-scale distributed infrastructures in various industries. And so one of the key industries that's applicable to some of the things we'll talk about today is certainly financial services, where Platform has had a big role. But there are other places where there's been big data that's existed, and some of it was kind of brought up with new tooling, but has existed for many, many years, like oil and gas and life sciences, et cetera. Thank you.
Jeffrey?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Krone. I'm with Zettaset. I'm Vice President of Research and Development. I'm one of the founders of Zettaset. Basically, what we do is we productize Hadoop. So we make it very easy to install, very easy to deploy, configure, very easy to manage it, very easy to, it's basically self-healing, and very easy to import, export data, and manipulate the data, and also tie into business intelligence tools, and also homegrown analytics tools as well.
Thank you. Lenin?
Hi, Lenin Gali, Senior Director of Game Dev Operations and Game Analytics Services at Ubisoft. And what we do is we're second largest game publisher in the world after EA. And so we have a global presence, and we collect a lot of information about how the games are doing. And so there's a lot of analysis that we do internally in Ubisoft. We use pretty much all the tools in the industry today, and also exploring a lot of the things that Anjul just basically said about how businesses use it. And game is also one of the industry. It's predominantly using a lot of behavioral and as well as economic data set.
Thank you. Yuvaraj?
Hi, so I'm Yuvaraj. Can you hear me clearly? Just let me move this a little bit. Okay, so I'm Yuvaraj. I'm a director with the solution management, looking into data warehousing platforms from SAP. And as I was reflecting on what is that I can bring into this panel, people who are technologists, people who have been working in this area for a very long time, I was reflecting on what I did. So I largely spent a lot of my development time in lifecycle management, application lifecycle management. And that's also a place where enterprises really see a lot of interesting challenges. So I would like to discuss along and share some of my thoughts on how application lifecycle management and this phenomenon of big data, the information lifecycle management, come together, and that's what I would like to share with you as well.
Great, thank you. So I'll go ahead and tee up a nice big softball, so we'll see how this goes. I'll try to get a couple different viewpoints from the panel. As you just heard, we have some people servicing enterprise customers, some people servicing internal IT for the purposes of consumer big data mining, and we also have people looking after both the technology set and a little bit more of the operational set. So we'll try to make sure those pivots are covered as we go, and if we miss them, ask us the questions at the end. So I'll ask this first one to Rohit. What do you guys see as big data scenarios for small and medium businesses, and maybe contrast those with enterprises, because you guys have been in the business for a while?
Yeah, so definitely I think now our focus has traditionally been very large-scale distributed infrastructures. So the data sets in small, medium businesses end up being types of simulations and models that people might want to consider. And even if you kind of think of hedge funds as kind of small, medium business, they have a lot of needs for data sets that aren't exactly really large, but they have just so many iterations of things that they need to go through. That's one of the areas that we find that they're using the big data type of scenarios. But from an enterprise perspective, we certainly see that the scale of the things, as I mentioned, so there are no small oil companies out there, right? So in that case, the scale of things is just extremely large, and the amounts of data that's flowing in is just massive scale.
And Lenin, I think you're a practical practitioner in this kind of audience space as well. How do you guys think about, inside of a gaming company, using big data to try to service either a new customer base or the one you have a little bit better through game design or et cetera?
Yeah, so you can generate as much data as you want, but I think ultimately it has to be analyzed. One of the challenges is to figure out what data we want to really generate. And so in a company, especially when you have a product, and in our case there are many products because everything that we generate is or produce is a product for us as a game. It's a life cycle. Going back to the development life cycle and figuring out what exactly your core things that you want to analyze or understand. There is a performance metrics, like Anju actually produced some of the slides where it's typical shift in the entire industry is we used to just only look at how much money we are making when you made a product. Now that is changing, and we're looking for efficiencies, trying to figure out where we're spending more to gain what we're gaining in terms of in the return. So the P&Ls and the profit and loss statements and now involve everything in the whole industry or in our organization. So there's a lot of things that are being driven to capture. And for us, it's a matter of taking every step of the way, and part of IT and part of the business, we need to measure every product in its life cycle and every step of the way, and then in return, see what we've learned from it, and then create efficiencies so to reduce the costs.
Great, thank you.
Profits.
So I think we've heard the word analysis and getting knowledge from the data set being kind of a central theme for today, and anything around big data isn't necessarily hard to capture the data, but getting through it. So I'll start with SAP this time. When do we get to insight as a service? So rather than just making cool 3D exploding graphs, when do we actually get to the point where we have something actionable that's near time or real time?
Yeah, so I look at it at big data problems slightly differently. Yeah, so I believe applications define the size of data. So it's not so much as organizations' sizes that define the data size, but it's the applications that define it. Having said that, the question you're really asking is, when will applications offer to the users insight built in? How can you then start creating processes where insight comes in together, along with, so that you can make better decisions as you move along? Or as the previous speaker spoke about, how can we have exploratory analysis happening and self-service BI going through? Yeah, I think all of these are very good questions. Now we need to fold it into the entire business landscape of how it can be made consumable, how it can extend their existing processes, accelerate improved business processes, and also provide opportunities for new applications. So from the way SAP is looking at it, we are seeing that, okay, this big data is a great new opportunity. It is allowing us to think about how we can bring in the value from big data into applications. And we need to fold in the analysis into the business process, thereby creating a new generation, unlocking new opportunities as the business grows. We need to move from the perspective of unique single value generating use cases to some kind of a generalization that we can bring it to a larger audience where we can package and sell to a larger group. So that is what we are constantly looking at. What are the great cases there? Can I generalize it across industries? Can I then offer it as a packaged offering? Then can enterprises take it and consume it in a way and make it something that is part of their existing IT landscape, part of their existing ways they're doing business, and then finally create that new value and generate new optimizations in the business.
Great. And Jeffrey, maybe I'll tee this up to you, since this is kind of core to what you guys offer as a capability for companies. Okay. And then I'll look for whoever's making eye contact and offer a quick add-on, because this is a dog pile kind of question, right? This is kind of why we're all in the business. So Jeffrey.
Oh, you mean
inside as a service.
Okay, inside
Go.
as a service. Okay, thanks. Basically, what we look at we're basically the infrastructure place, so we basically have the ability to pull in information, ability to analyze. We don't really do the analysis phase of that, so we actually tie in with other BI tools to do analysis. From the insight side, I mean, going back to the first question you asked, like the small, medium-sized business side, we had a customer that actually was taking data from satellite data and was actually analyzing vineyards. And they're analyzing the health of those vineyards, and they're collecting a lot of information. And then what they wanted was the insight was based on this information, they wanted to see how healthy those vines were and what they could do to actually increase the viability of those vines. So that's one thing that we would look at. And it's one of the and they had their own analytics to do this. They had their own homegrown analytics to do this. So another thing that we do from an insight perspective, we work with a number of banks as well, and we collect information. And based on that information, we look at from a security perspective, whether or not there's been a breach within the company. Like, for instance, it could be a phishing attack, it could be ATM fraud, wire fraud, and then the bank would proactively work on that to, cut off the ability of the person or the customer to actually do an ATM transfer, a wire transfer, or anything like that. So basically, what we do is we are able to compile the information together. We're able to manipulate any way you want, and then we're able to tie into existing analytic tools, being commercial tools, or if it was statisticians on staff that created the additional behavioral analytics tools in order to gain insight into the business. So it depends on what the business is, and it depends on what the data is, what the vertical is, and our infrastructure allows them to be able to gain that insight into whatever they're looking for.
Great. And I think we have another viewpoint as well.
Yeah, I think with respect to insight, I think that's the key here, because what we are trying to do from big data is really get insight. And insight is a function of, and so the infrastructure needs to support your insight needs, because it's like, do you need real-time insight, which is some of the cases? Do you need some level of interactability with that data? Or can you wait some time because you just have lots of data to crunch through? And so being able to provide a platform, so from an infrastructure perspective, to meet all those three different requirements will allow the applications, as SAP just mentioned, right, to be able to provide the different types of insights in different cases, because you can't, there's a certain ROI on the infrastructure. So the infrastructure you're going to put in place is going to be dependent on how real time do you want that insight, right? Because there's a certain level of expense associated with putting out these things, which can essentially, consume lots of data at high speed and give you results right away, versus something where you can queue up stuff and then wait. And there are solutions in the marketplace that can do the latter, but there are far fewer solutions that can do, real time or even very low latency type of, offerings.
So from a consumer
you have to have a
point of
4 for 4 for this one.
Just from a consumer point of view, using the technologies that are in the industry for what it is that we can do with our game industry, is pretty much understanding the variations in the data, just to understand what's really keeping us apart as a business, and also who are the big spenders, what markets and what targets we need to go to, and we need to do sampling, especially when we get a lot of noise from the data set. You're looking for the cream, whereas you got a big crop, and so we need to figure out how do you milk it. So from big data point of view, tools definitely help you, but I think very few are in the market that literally, especially in the big data right now. And so for us, it's very important to make the decision to see and make the analysts and the business do the actual work from ID point of view to provide the platform for them or the services to enable them to do it.
Great. So I'll tee up the first responder on this one to be Jeffrey. So get ready. So you guys see a lot of this, and I'll tee up Rohit right after as well. What industries are most aggressively tackling real, honest, non-experimental big data projects today? And maybe some anecdotes or some data samples from there that would help the room get how big these things are or how they're going.
Okay, I mean, one of them I just mentioned was the financial sector. A lot of banks are looking at their data at this point. They're analyzing it from not only from a security standpoint, but from a consumer interest standpoint. There's one interesting case that we worked with one of the banks on in which they didn't like the standard credit report. They thought that the FICO score was not a relevant tool to decide whether or not they're going to actually pay their mortgage or not. So we actually went into the bank and looked at it, and they actually want to pull data from social media feeds like, have you been divorced recently, or have you been ill recently? I mean, there's some moral issues related to that. I didn't really like that piece of it. And then they also went into, how well have you paid off your credit cards, how well have you done your mortgage, what kind of financial investments you had. So they pulled data together from all the different data sources, all the different databases internally within the bank. And they wanted to create this unique credit score to see whether or not you would actually pay out money or not, actually pay back the mortgage or not. So that's one use on the financial side. The other use was the security side, which I talked about, looking for breaches. For instance, a phishing attack or ATM fraud or wire fraud or other types of penetrations within their internal banking network. And then being able to take that information and once they found a breach, be able to go historically through all their customers to see whether or not that breach has potentially occurred within those other customers, through like several years back of data. Another industry would be government. Actually not. Government is a heavy user of big data. I mean, they basically...
Public or non-existent agencies?
Non-existent agencies. And some public agencies as well. So the non-existent agencies, of course, want to analyze unstructured data, and they want to see whether or not, for instance, like Homeland Security, they want to see whether or not there's any correlations between all these emails that they're intercepting, all this Twitter information, Facebook information, and other information they collect, and see if there's any kind of a way to profile a particular person or a potential terrorist, for instance. It also applies to the public side, which is more of the non-shadow agencies or non-three-letter agencies. So they want to be able to analyze the data and effectively use it as well. Another vertical, a couple other verticals. I mean, mostly the financial, the government vertical is a big one as well. And then also, we actually seen this in manufacturing as well. I mean, one example would be a customer that we talked to that was able to look at basically their plants in Europe. They had manufacturing plants in Europe and China and Asia and other parts of the world, and they were able to look at now what exactly causes a particular plant to lose money. And they were looking at all aspects of it, like maybe raw materials costs went up, and if the raw materials costs went up, this would cause them to have a higher cost to develop the materials, to develop the end product. And then also it might have been a labor cost. There might have been a labor union or a worker committee in Europe or something that was causing prices to go up on the labor side, and they were using this to determine whether or not what was causing this factory to lose money, and they were able to discern specifically why it was losing money and fix it before it caused a problem that they had to close it down. So basically it's in I think basically it's financial, it's government, some manufacturing, and those are kind of the industries that we've seen that use big data are pretty big in.
And what has platform seen, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's definitely financial, which is one of our primary industries, so all the use cases apply there. But it's like almost across the board, right? Nowadays, you see, it's almost like latent data, right? It always was there, and now they're finding some intelligence that they can glean out of it. So another one of our traditional industries has been the electronic design automation industry, where we help the large chip manufacturers, et cetera, to manage their farms, essentially, for chip design. And so as part of the process, right, even yield analysis is something that has enormous potential for increasing the yield from the semiconductors, right? So that's something that we've seen. The bioinformatics industry, so genome sequencing, et cetera. So you have a large genome sequence, and then you kind of have fragments, and you're trying to find, how those fragments match up to those. And there it's big data, not just as in the size of the resident data, but even in memory, right? So a genome sequence can be like 10 gigabytes. And we've had to do some special work with one of our customers to essentially provide them like a shared memory version of the product so that they could actually host the genome once in their memory and not have it replicate for every instance of that processing, which is very, very expensive. So there's a lot of industry like the bioinformatics, which is finding uses, and oil and gas, which traditionally has been obviously a big data type of industry, is also finding now ways in which they can use some of the newer techniques like MapReduce in their reservoir simulations, et cetera. So I'd say, you can find even in manufacturing we're seeing, so we have a strong presence with respect to people who are designing and manufacturing automobile parts, but then there are new attachments to those where they're now looking at warranty and claim submissions, or insurance fraud would be another thing. So it's just insurance claims on certain aspects of their warranties, right? So there's many different use cases that are coming up.
Interesting. Yeah, and maybe to shift gears a little bit about what people are doing with it and how they are actually getting something done. I'll shift to Lenin since he's in the pain point and is get to figure this out, and Yuvaraj as well. How do we think about organizations aligning to be able to deliver this stuff, right? So do you need to go out and hire 15 PhDs to run tools? Or have you guys transformed what it means to be an IT shop internally, or in your case, Yuvaraj, being able to offer these capabilities for large existent data sets, which might be pretty typical structured, and offer them in an unstructured way? So maybe Lenin first.
Yes, people are always the biggest challenge to find, right? I mean, everybody wants the smart people to be in the team. But there are only very few PhDs available, and we all know data scientists is a scarcity now in the valley, and now we're becoming a data valley here. Everybody is poaching for the other. And the other situation we have in the organization is technology choices, right? And you have way too many, and what is the right fit for you? And now you start clearing out every aspect of that. For us, in a gaming industry, we have to make certain decisions while the player is playing. And so that means it's pretty much a real time. And so in order to make certain decisions, you have to have past history analyzed, at the same time the current player capabilities and how long and where they are, what they're doing, and least bit of distraction, and increase the bottom line for games. And so in terms of making the right decisions, people you have to have, and the technology choices we have is literally the biggest thing that the management and in terms of the businesses are making tough choices to make. So there's a lot of time goes into R&D. There's a lot of time goes into prototyping, because figure out what technology right fit for your data. And also, you also attend something like these forums to figure out what is other people are doing and lesson learned. And so that's where most of the management is really doing. And the actual people who work on really need the guidance to say, yes, we have a tool now. Let's go. Do something with it. The learning curve, and also to implement and then take what is implemented and move it into the new generation tool set and then try to work with it. And then also at the same time, you have to consider the business needs, and then how do you address that? So you have to take the business input into this, and also make sure that we also meeting their expectations at the same time. So there is a lot of choices and a lot of noise, a lot of things. It's becoming more managerial as well as technical challenges that IT has to face in the business itself. But I think the tools are really incredible nowadays with the distributed computing coming in, a lot of MPPs becoming more agile and more quasi-real-time, and the business intelligence tools becoming also more adaptable and to the nature of the tool set that is coming in. So it's a matter of choice. There is absolutely what I say is before you pick a choice with tools, you do your homework.
Yep. So SAP has been thinking a long time on how to really bring in the value, the mix of enterprise existing data, which could also be called big. I mean, you do it differently. You archive information, you keep it there. Probably the information is not accessible, and then this new thought that's coming in. Okay, this big data deluge, the exhaust of transactional systems. How can they generate strategic and operational value, right? So the way we see it is that folding in some of your earlier questions about insight as a service, trying to get transactional analytical systems coming together, accelerating new kind of business processes, right? That's key. So we need to get the enterprises start thinking about analysis as they are doing their regular work. So as their transactional processes get more and more intelligent, they can become more and more productive. So that's point number one. Then as we start enabling such a framework, that's where we are speaking about in-memory data management and how we can start folding in technologies from Sybase and all the interesting innovations that we're getting there. So the platforms, SAP HANA as being the in-memory data management technology coming through. We are trying to see how these infrastructural pieces are coming together to unlock new opportunities in new industries. So that's the second point. So where we're trying to look across verticals, trying to go to these kind of forums, listen to people and say, what is that we can generalize for a certain vertical? Utilities need it, finance needs it, capital markets need it, healthcare needs it. Is there something that I can package and give to everyone? Can I make it configurable? Can I make it useful for an enterprise in a way that they have been traditionally using enterprise systems? And what are the challenges that come there? And immediately the aspect of application lifecycle management, the information lifecycle management, the data lifecycle management. So we're going from consuming that information to the next part where we have to maintain the application and the data and how they co-evolve as they move along. One of the interesting things that enterprise notices that it's like they refer to it as putting in a couple of rabbits in a room. You put these enterprise systems in a room, and all of a sudden when you open it, there are so many out there. So it's like they just multiply because that's the way the enterprise grows, the interconnections grow. Every interconnect is going to cost a lot of money. I was told about a very interesting fact that the Gartner report came up, which says that every line which you connect between two systems costs you around $5,000 to $10,000 over 5 years, every line. And now we're talking about networked enterprise systems, and then you're talking about how these systems have, whenever you want to upgrade, so you might not want to upgrade very frequently, but there is definitely a need to upgrade. So what is the upgrade path? How do you plan it? How do you move it? Yeah, all of that brings in another core aspect. How can we eliminate unnecessary overheads in the data management space? How can we bring this all together in something coherent? How can we make the big data platform intelligent? Not only in terms of consuming the platform on its own for its own intelligence, but also making it available to the applications. So big data in the enterprise is, on one side, bringing along with us the enterprises which have trusted us over time and making sure that they get the benefit of the big data, not only from outside, the enterprise touch data, but also from what's inside. And on the other hand, trying to understand how enterprises will react and respond to these changes that happen in their landscape, how well they can adopt and accept, and how well they want to manage and optimize their data management framework. So that is how SAP is trying to see it, not from the application side and from the data side and the data management side, and see it through the entire life cycle that goes on here.
That makes me want to immediately throw down the microphone, run out and start a business analyst consulting company, because I think there's money in that, I hear.
Yeah.
So one thing we talked about was the people, processes, and the top of the iceberg side. But at the end of it, it actually has to run on some kit. Last time I checked, we're not just putting power through circuit breakers. It actually does some computational work. So Jeffrey and I talked a little bit about what actually works to make it run, and also reach out to our platform friends as well, since they actually make the lights do more than burn power for their end customers. What do you guys think are the most promising technologies to be able to deliver above and beyond the software side, just the pure hardware side? What's the state of the art? Are we all going to be running Tesla-based graphic CPUs under our desks and having really hot offices, or what's the forecast?
We've been working with high-performance computing environments, like Fusion I/O, for instance. So we've been working with solid-state devices or in-memory capabilities. So as we said, we're a productized Hadoop company. So what we try to do with these companies is basically we have multi-cluster support. So we can support SATA-based clusters or SSD-based clusters or even a cloud environment or other technologies that come out. What we try to do is we partner with these hardware vendors with the high-performance computing environments so that we have the best hardware to run the application on. So a lot of times, one piece of it is we want to run everything in memory if we can do that, because you're talking microseconds versus milliseconds. The other thing we're talking about is if we do encryption or if we do compression, we want hardware encryption and compression capabilities. So we're looking at vendors to integrate into those machines as well. So in one case, what we're looking at doing is we're actually integrating the compression, the encryption capability, and the solid-state devices on the same physical card. We're putting it into these devices. And we've basically noticed enormous increases in performance. Like we did a terabyte sort on 5 nodes on a Fusion I/O system, and we were able to do it in less than 30 minutes, which is pretty substantial from a performance perspective. And the other thing that we're looking at doing is we're going beyond the hardware piece of it. We're going to the software optimization piece as well. So we're actually looking at doing artificial intelligence or mathematical models to actually look at how the job processes through the system. So we look at all the network traffic. We look at the mapper reducer processes within Hadoop. We analyze all those processes. We look for data spills, that kind of information. And what we do is we profile the job, and then we create basically the most optimal parameters to run that job as efficiently as possible. We're able to get probably like a 2x to a 3 to 4x increase in performance on the software side. And the other thing that we're looking at doing is potentially looking at resharing, like if you're reading in data from a workflow, like you have an Uzi workflow and you're reading a large amount of data, but you have multiple jobs that are reading in the same data multiple times and you're reading in billions of rows of data. It would be optimal if you could actually read that data one time as opposed to multiple times, and we're looking at technologies to do that as well. Or if you're creating intermediate files that are only used by one specific job, we're trying to share that information between multiple jobs within a workflow. So we're kind of combining a software optimization approach with a hardware optimization approach, and we're trying to obtain an ability to basically hypothetically deduce how fast a particular job or workflow is going to run on multiple environments. So basically we can profile those environments, and then we can profile a job, and then we can hypothetically determine how fast that job's going to run or that workflow is going to run in those different environments. So we're looking at it, as I said, both from the hardware and the software perspective. So, but most of the stuff that we're doing, on the hardware side is more the SSD side, doing it in memory, and that's been a very, very efficient way of doing it. And we're trying to combine that with being able to utilize, because it's very expensive, we want to be able to utilize SATA-based systems with SSD systems and be able to combine it and make the most optimal performance for the job without spending a substantial amount of money. Because you're talking a substantial increase in price using SSD devices.
And Rohit?
So essentially, platform computing has been in the high-performance computing space for 20 years. So a lot of those optimization we kind of assumed from the infrastructure perspective. Now, obviously, different use cases are going to require you to invest different amounts of money. There was a time when InfiniBand was kind of the standard in high-performance computing, and then faster networks kind of came along, and then so now people still standardize back to Gigi. So those kind of optimization, of course, solid state versus, caching mechanisms, those are all optimization. But our key capability from a software perspective has always been in very intelligent scheduling and being able to know what kinds of things to put to what systems, and being data aware in the context of big data is obviously big. Having data affinity, which essentially allows you to kind of always route tasks to the right system where the data would be. And then in terms of the latency of the scheduler, right? So essentially a lot of the other schedulers are able to only process larger jobs. And by larger, I'm not talking like very large, but I'm just saying like if you have very short jobs, like, they're just like a second each or something, and you have lots of short jobs to run, that's one of the key areas where the platform solution can kind of really give that benefit. And we found like in a life sciences, E. coli type of sample that they were running, we got like 12x boost on performance because there was just basically a lot of short jobs and lots of jobs, right? So depending on the use case, there's going to be different technologies that can provide you different benefits, and certainly, the hardware and the changes that are happening in that space are obviously going to keep happening, but the software piece is kind of the key value that we bring to whatever kinds of environments you can afford, right? Because there's a cost associated to with what kind of networking, what kind of disks, et cetera, you're going to go with.
Great. And I've been gently nudged to say we've been running a little bit long this morning, so I'm going to do my best to pontificate shortly and then open up for questions. So one of the things that's interesting to me being in the cloud business is how much of this workload is going to run on-premise versus how much of it's going to be running off-premise. I've heard a couple of companies, Zigna being one of them, saying we buy the base and rent the spike. So as we get to more homogenization about expectations on service endpoints from a software point of view, and being able to support those in an efficient way on various hardware platforms, either tooled for either the vertical or the horizontal space, this gets to be a pretty feature-rich discussion around where does the data live, how do I maintain the data, how do I segment which signals data I want versus the ones I actually keep. And there is not a difference today. Everyone just keeps everything, as we saw this morning. The name of the game right now is just to store everything, and we'll figure out how to analyze it later. So I think we'll be attacking new problems very quickly when we talk big data, and we'll have a whole new series of things to talk about probably next year at this time around how to orchestrate components and service layers across clouds to on-premises. But that's a ... discussion, although I'm happy to give away cards and accept vast amounts of money to answer that question to my own opinion. So quickly, apologies to the facilitators here, but I'll take at least a couple of questions because these guys are super shiny objects in my view, at least, since they are active practitioners of the state of the art, and they're more than welcome to throw tomatoes with us at the state of the art. So questions from the room? Long questions, long answers. Oh, wait, I'm dyslexic. Quick questions, quick answers. So, yes. And the answer can't be AS400 IBM. Go ahead.
From the standpoint of gaming industry, like you mentioned, could you talk a little bit about a specific thing, the analysis that was done and what was the outcome and what was used from an analysis standpoint?
Yeah, great question. So in the gaming industry, it's kind of a little bit of a myth until it evolved from being a console-based into now online and into social networking. The problem here is there are various things you need to predict. One, whether this game is going to make it. In a sense, can it handle the loads and the number of players coming on? So from a performance standpoint, during the development cycles, we emphasize on making sure that we collect the metrics. From an infrastructure point of view, can we sustain the growth? And so we need to measure that. From a product or as a game point of view, is the game generating what it needs to generate in terms of is it keeping the players long enough in the game? Is the game has the captivity nature to it? What features are really captivating the users to the A/B testing? And also, once this is all done, we need to measure how many people really played, how long they played, what are the things that they've actually done in the game that you want to really enhance much further, and ultimately, are you making money? So there's a lot of elements that we start analyzing, and on top of all of this, in the end, like you have several games, and what you do is analyze cross games to figure out what patterns you can observe from the players, and then in the end, after all of those, you realize, is this game really viable for us to build? Or should we be building another type of game? So a lot of decisions that go through in this process.
So one short question and one very short answer, of course. Yes, sir. Mike is coming.
My name is Georgia. From my understanding right now, we get more and more data installed in server side. We develop technology like cloud computing, Internet of Things, but the weak side is the client side. When the data gets tons, we need to manage this data, to editing this data, to efficiently use this data. I just wonder, the world market right now, is there any useful commercial software to do this job?
Build versus buy, he wants to buy. What's out there?
So from a business point of view, this is typically where it starts. Yes, we have a lot of tools, a lot of technology choices. It starts at the IT to figure out what evaluation. And for us, when the company grows, and then you have to start providing some what we call optimizations and consolidation, at the same time also distribution. So cloud, right now is a big thing is internal versus external cloud, and a hybrid cloud and a multi-cloud solution for infrastructure. As far as big data, like there are various solutions. You could go with IBM, you can go with...
or maybe your two favorite product names. We'll plug somebody. I don't know
Hadoop.
who's going to come up, but we'll
Let's
see.
go. Hadoop is literally what is right now evolving in big enterprises and big data side to collect the data first and analyze later. And also an MPP, there are various platforms that you can choose. It depends on what you're comfortable with. So there are various vendors like Vertica and
Rohit, do you have a favorite?
I'd certainly encourage
Not
you
IBM,
to try.
just kidding.
So I think the favorite from my perspective is, what are you trying to do with that data, right? I mean, are you going to, if it's just Hadoop style, I mean, certainly Hadoop meets the need. If you want to have more real-time and data, then you need to have like a streams-like product. But if you want like interactability, some kind of modeling simulation, low latency, then we have a product that will certainly help you with that. So I think it's really you need to. And with big data, I would say a lot of it is on premise unless your entire business is in the cloud, because moving the data is not an easy task and it's expensive. So from that perspective, you have to kind of, from the get-go, decide, is your business going to be built in the cloud, in which case your data can reside in the cloud. Then you can use tools in the cloud. But from a big data perspective, if your business is on-premise, then to do the processing in the cloud can be fairly expensive.
So just one last question for the panel is, how many of you guys are planning on being available at lunch? Oh, so feel free to come and grab us. So we'll terminate it there. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.